Good morning, everybody. Welcome to TED Talks Ball. We've got an early morning hump day edition, June 21st. It's actually first day of summer. Solstice usually falls right around this time of year. I know because my deceased grandmother birthday was today, June 21st. So she lived to be 106 too, which is pretty crazy. But welcome, Rob Stats Guerrera. You may know him as Stats on Fire on Twitter. Also GSN 49ers on YouTube, Gold Standard Network. He works there, I think, with Jason Aponte and Steph. I've seen some shows. So
Yep.
really cool crew. I've had Steph on a number of times. She's amazing. Love her Bose impersonations. Love her takes. Got to get Jason Aponte on one of these days. But Rob, thank you for coming on. It really means a lot to me. And let everybody know anything I may have missed about you, anything you got coming up that you want to promote, anything like that.
Oh, well, thank you for having me. First of all, no, just Gold Standard 49ers Gold Standard Podcast Network. I'm going to be live with Grant Cohn in a couple hours on our YouTube channel, Gold Standard Network. So you can check that out. We basically are live pretty much every day on YouTube on the channel. We have a website, goldstandardniners.com. You can go there to get my takes on different things that are happening with the 49ers. And yeah, excited to be on, and let's talk some ball.
Right on. Let's do that. Real quick, first, just want to say hi to some early audience members here in the house. We got Bebop Jones here saying, woot woot, go 49ers. He's coming to us from the Philly area. Bebop's great. We got 187 in the house. He always starts out with a BBNG for the Bang Bang Niner Gang. Mitch Kofsky is part of the Hardcore Sports Network. He's one of the channels I simulcast to, along with Let's Talk Sport and, of course, my main channel, TED Talks Ball. And then Kali Young in the house. He is a great audience member, and he has great chat groups with a lot of the top creators in there. So thanks, Kali, for joining us. And he always holds my feet to the fire. He never lets me get away with anything that he disagree with. And I appreciate that. I don't want an echo chamber. It sounds like you're kind of the same way, Rob. You can stand on your own 2 feet, 10 toes down, and stand behind your takes. And if we're wrong, we admit it. If not, keep going and keep trucking with what we like to do.
100%.
Yeah. So as far as, things in the Niner world, there's definitely been quite a bit in the news lately, even though we're out of practices. One thing I saw was that the NFLPA voted Brock Purdy the number one rising veteran, and he beat out some notable names like Garrett Wilson, who was the offensive rookie of the year for the Jets, the wide receiver, and then Tony Pollard from the Cowboys, who's a heck of a running back. And I always blank on his name. The corner from the Denver Broncos, the young up-and-coming Patrick Surtain Jr. So I'd love to get your thoughts on that, if you had any.
Well, I mean, look, Brock was incredible down the stretch last year. I mean, he almost won Offensive Rookie of the Year, and he only started 5 regular season games. So that tells you just how impressive he was when he got in there. So it's no surprise to see that the NFLPA had him on the top of that list. It was a strange list. Sauce Gardner wasn't on the list, which to me is crazy because you could make the argument he's a top 3 corner already. But we all know this with Brock. He is in a position to succeed. Great play caller, great offense around him, great defense, which I think sometimes people overlook. He's got the whole package, as any quarterback would want to be in San Francisco, and he's got a limited sample, but what we saw, we liked, so it's not surprising to me that he was there.
No doubt about it. Yeah, I thought the same thing. Why no Sauce Gardner? And I think I heard somewhere around, I can't confirm this 100%, but that a lot of it had to do with jersey sales for that NFLPA list.
Okay.
So maybe the Jets fans weren't buying the Sauce Gardner jerseys enough, or they were busy buying the Garrett Wilson ones, and spent offense usually trumps defense, especially in this world we live in where fantasy football takes are so important. It's such a lucrative sector of sports. that really focuses a lot more on offense than defense traditionally. So that could be part of it too. Bebop Jones is saying, "Go San Francisco Giants." Are you a Giants fan too, Rob? Are you a big baseball, basketball fan? Do you follow all Bay Area teams? How do you sit
So
with all that?
baseball is actually my favorite sport, believe it or not. I grew up going to
Wow.
baseball games, but I am unfortunately a Seattle Mariners fan, the only team that has never even appeared in a World Series. So baseball season is usually a slog for me. They just made the playoffs last year for the first time in 21 years. So that's been my baseball life. So yeah, I guess go Giants.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I thought the Mariners had a real good season last season. I guess it sounds like it didn't carry over, at least not yet. The season, there's still plenty left in the season, so I guess we'll see. I mean, heck, a month ago, most of us were saying, "Oh, I was saying, I won't speak for most of us. I'll speak for myself. I was saying, oh, this ownership, all they do is they only spend enough to put butts in seats." They're not enough to be enough to maybe compete, but not enough to contend. And next thing you know, um, Farhan Zaidi, who we brought in from the Dodgers because he builds good farm systems, apparently has maybe done that for the Giants because he brought up 2 or 3 farm system players, a pitcher, catcher, what have you, and all of a sudden, I think we're on a 9-game win streak or something like that, something crazy. So, knock on wood, we'll hope that continues for the San Francisco Giants. And I'll wish you good luck for your Mariners. I got no ill will. It's one of those things like where I hate the Seahawks more than any other team, but I have no ill will towards the Mariners at all. So
It's a really weird thing for me because I follow a bunch of Mariners people on Twitter, but they're also Seahawks people. So for half the year, I hate their guts. And the other half the year, I'm like, oh, good. That's good. I like that tweet. It's really hard to live in both of those worlds.
no doubt about it. No doubt about it. I just want to say real quick hi to Bryant Culp coming to us. He just started a YouTube channel himself, coming up over 100 subs. Really great guy, great audience member. Make sure everybody check him out, give him a like and a subscribe. If you could do the same for Rob with GSN 49ers and me here at TED Talks Ball, we'd appreciate that. While we're talking about the Seattle Seahawks, it's interesting. I was telling Jesse Naylor that I've been using AI, Bard, and Chat GPT and whatnot to help me optimize titles for shows. And basically, I had some Seahawks content creators on, and so I kind of worked through some iterations, and I came up with one of like, did the Seahawks do enough to dethrone the San Francisco 49ers for the 2023 season? And so I plugged that into my title. I was ready to roll, and then I was like, you know what? I'm going to ask Bard and GPT the question instead of just like, can you optimize this for me? Like, and I use a headline analyzer too to once I get the results, and then of course go with your gut always above everything. But it's cool just to see sort of what these sort of artificial intelligence engines come up with too. Anyway, so I asked them the actual question: did the Seahawks do enough? And they just said basically, we don't have enough information. Ask an expert. And I was kind of like, yes, because I feel like anymore you have to be careful. Anything you want to do, like, can AI do it better now? And do we expect AI to do it better in the near future? And I would say it doesn't seem like it there for that side of what we do. But I would love to get your opinion, Rob. Do you think the Seattle Seahawks have done enough to dethrone the Niners, or at least narrow the gap some? We beat them 3-0 last season. Looked like they had a pretty good draft.
We didn't just beat them. For the most part, we kicked the tar out of them. Like, let's not just skip past that, okay? The playoff game was close at one point, and then the Niners hit the gas and just pulled away, and it was an embarrassment. And I know the Seahawks, we think, had a good draft. Everybody likes to praise the Seahawks draft. Slow down with the draft class. It's very possible all those players stink. I know it's blasphemy to say. We always act like everybody we draft is going to be a Hall of Famer. All I'm saying is they got to prove it. And even if they're good players, they may not be that good in year one. It may take them a year or two to get going, like Aaron Banks with the 49ers, who barely played in year one, and then year two was a starter. Let's see the Seahawks come out and do it. That's all I'm saying. Let me see you beat us once in a season before I start to clutch my pearls and worry about how good the Seahawks might be. Okay. That's all I'm saying. Slow down with the Seattle love.
So you're saying Rashad Penny and LJ Collier exist, right?
Like,
Some of their
exactly.
notable first round busts that the Seahawks have had.
Since the implementation of the rookie wage scale, right, where you get the 5th-year option on first-round picks, how many 5th-year options or extensions do you think the Seahawks have done?
I have no idea, but I'm guessing it's pretty low.
It's 0. 0. So before we all start shaking in our boots about their draft picks, let me know when they actually draft a guy that's worth re-signing in the first round. So I'm just saying, let's slow down. I know everyone in Seattle's all pumped up. Come beat us, and then we'll talk.
Yeah, and you know, I mean, I think Devin Witherspoon looks like a good corner. There's some argument whether he's the best or top 2 or 3 prospect in the draft. Jackson Smith and Jigba probably scares me a little bit more, but I mean, ultimately, like, to beat us, don't you have to stop the run? And didn't they lose a bunch of tackles? I know they got Draymond Jones from the Denver Broncos, and they brought back blanking on the other defensive tackle's name, Jaron.
It doesn't matter. They couldn't stop the run, so they could bring him back. Great. Bobby Wagner's back. Okay, awesome. Like, again, I'm not scared of you. Your quarterback is still Geno Smith, okay? Sorry. Did he have a nice year? Yeah, he had a nice year. I could argue a nice half a year. The second half of his season was not nearly as good as the first half of the season. Again, let's see you do it. Okay, you got another good wide receiver? Great. You already had 2 good wide receivers. I want to see you do it because I don't have faith in you, especially if the game is close, by the way, because nobody bungles more close game situations than Pete Carroll. So bring it on. That's all I'm saying.
There you go. Callie Young agreeing with you, said, I know Geno had a career year, but I'm not scared of Geno. It was interesting, after we beat them in Seattle to go to have the regular season sweep against the Seahawks, when Purdy had the injured ribs and oblique there. Mm-hmm. It was interesting that they went on a run to make the playoffs, but I remember somebody posted the list of, quarterbacks that Geno beat. And I know they don't play each other head to head. I get that, but come on. It's just what we do. We compare quarterbacks to quarterbacks. And I'll just say it was far from a murderer's row. I was saying more like parking ticket row, or victims row. It was some pretty awful QBs that he bested to get them into the playoffs. And then obviously we spanked them in the wild card game. So to make it 3-0. It was great to have our first sweep against them since 2011. Our first win in Seattle since 2019 when Jimmy did it to get us number 1 seed. I shouldn't say Jimmy, when we did it with Jimmy to get
Trey Greenlaw
the number 1 seed.
Stopping the receiver at the 1-inch line.
Dre Greenlaw, Debo. Yeah, there were some great plays in that game for sure. So Brian Culp says Geno is better than people are giving him credit. He's he had a nice little resurgence after being considered a bust. Mm-hmm. But I guess the season will tell us a lot more to see. There's more tape and more time to analyze that tape. So we'll see how he does. I think he's okay. I think I'd rather have him than Jimmy G, but that's not saying much.
That's a low bar. And look, that could be Geno Smith ever plays in his life. That could be a career year for him. We don't know. Like you said, I think the more film that got out on him, the worse he played. And now, of course, coordinators are going to have a whole offseason to study up and see what they're doing. I really got to see it. Like, why am I sitting there terrified of Geno Smith? Why? I don't get it. Was our defense chopped liver? Like, I think they're pretty good, aren't they? So I don't get it. I'm not saying they're a terrible team, but are ready to come at us for the division? No, I don't think so.
No doubt about it. I don't think so. I think they narrowed the gap, but they didn't close the gap nor overtake us. I think also part of why Geno had such big numbers was because their defense was pretty poor. I think they had the 25th ranked defense in the league. And when your defense is a sieve, then you end up having to throw a lot to try and compensate for that. And it's nice that he completed a lot of those, but I think that if their defense does play better this season, then his numbers might drop because of that too, because he's not forced to force it so often. See, Bryant says Geno knows the system. People said last year the Seahawks would be horrible. They weren't. Yeah, I was very wrong about the Seahawks last year. I was saying 5-12 or worse, and obviously they go 9-8, and they made the playoffs. So, congrats to them for making the playoffs.
Right, that's going to be the battle. It's going to be the improvement that Geno possibly makes with another year in the system and another year of comfort like that versus the adjustment the rest of the league makes to what he was doing last year. That's going to be the battle, and whoever wins that battle will determine how the Seahawks look.
There you go. And then Steve-O Supremo is in the house, or is Steve-O back at it now? Says Geno, who is that? Never heard of him. And 187 says never scared of Geno, LOL. Collie says one good season, all of a sudden Geno's Warren Moon. I'm not buying it. I think I'm in that camp. I think he's decent. I just let's see him stack some good seasons. Just like anyone, small sample size can be deceiving. And Steve says we're about to run away with the NFC West. All right, so there's a good segue. Rob, do you have a prediction for us in the NFC West this season?
The Niners should win the NFC West. And by the way, everything we're saying about Geno applies to Brock Purdy and Trey Lance if he were to be the guy as well. You've got to do it. You've got to see it. If other teams said, hey, I'm not shaking in my boots because you have Brock Purdy, I could understand that. Now, I think Brock Purdy, his offense is playing better than the Seahawks offense, but I get it. I'm very slow to sort of crown people, right? Especially quarterbacks. I need to see you do it, and I need to see you do it for at least 2 years before I get really comfortable with you. So I think you could say the same thing about Brock, and I get that. But look at the competition in the NFC West. The Cardinals are a tire fire. The Rams are rebuilding. Like they've got major flaws. The Seahawks, like we said, they're not bad, but there is a gap between them and the 49ers. If the Niners don't win the NFC West, that's going to be a big, big disappointment. They're only underdogs in one game this entire season, and that's against Philadelphia in Philadelphia, and I think they're like 2-point underdogs. So that tells you the expectations for the 49ers. So, yeah, I do think an NFC West title in 2023 should be the expectation.
Yeah, I think so too. I've been saying 5-1, split with Seattle. Maybe lose the one in Seattle, which would suck because it's Thanksgiving Day. I want that drumstick on the 50. The way Sherman did it to us.
Yeah, but, see, I never blame them. Sorry to cut you off.
No, anytime.
That wasn't their idea. That was NBC who just carted out a turkey on the middle of the field and was like, "Eat this." Like I always thought that was really weird. They did not orchestrate that. That was like a television thing that NBC brought out. So I never got on them for that.
I'm with you. And I'll probably be at the Seahawks game in Levi's, but I would trade that one for the Thanksgiving Day one if we were going to split. I would love to get the one in their house, but I don't know. I guess we'll see. There's no guarantees that they can even take one from us. But just playing there at Lumen or whatever they're calling it these days has always been a house of horrors for us. So the fact that we did it last year, I don't think is a guarantee that we will again this year. And then as far as games we're favored in this season, do you think we should be favored week 1 against Pittsburgh, against the Steelers in Pittsburgh, when they're like 15-1 in opening day games in the last 16 years, when you got TJ Watt and Highsmith going to be going up against McKivitz in his first ever start at right tackle in the NFL, that is. I think he played it in college. But what do you think about that game?
It's a little scary. I'm not going to lie. It's not. Whoever the 49ers quarterback is for that game is not going to be put in a very good position, right? Let's say it's Brock. According to everything we know, he's not going to be cleared until just before the final preseason game. Now, he'll be doing some football stuff, but he won't be fully cleared until then. That's not ideal when you're coming off a major injury and you don't have a ton of time to get the chemistry and get acclimated with your guys to have to go to Pittsburgh and face that defense in week 1. let's say Brock is not ready yet and they want to go with Trey Lance. Well, he's in a competition with Sam Darnold, so he's not as prepared as he could be because you're splitting reps and taking reps away from him for Sam freaking Darnold. Or if it's Darnold, same thing. He's in the split competition with Lance and he's learning a new system. So it's really not an ideal spot for any 49ers quarterback week one. And it's going to be a very, very difficult game. Fortunately, I'm not scared of the Steelers offense at all. So I don't think the Niners are going to have to score a ton to win the game, but it's going to be difficult to score.
So you're not afraid of small hands Kenny Pickett then?
No, I'm not. As my co-host Michelle Maju calls him, little tiny baby hands Kenny Pickett.
Michelle's great. I love her. We've gotten in. She and I have definitely gotten into it a few times on the timeline, but I totally respect her opinions. She's amazing. Great co-host for you there, no doubt about it. Real quick, just want to say hi to Dion from Niner Gang Podcast, Dion Johnson in the house. Everybody make sure you give him a like and a subscribe. He's a great guy, great creator. Love having him on when we get together. He's also part of the 49ers podcast network that I'm a member of. So I think they have a big guest today. I think they're having Larry Krueger on. So make sure you check that out with Beto and Brandon. And I forget everybody who's maybe Dion's on there too today. I think there's maybe one other from that group, and they're having Larry on. So obviously an amazing guest. 187 says Pickett is sus.
Yeah,
he is, but I mean, Pickens seems to be pretty cool when he's making those acrobatic grabs. Dare I say, OBJ-esque, some of the catches that he's making.
He looks like a good player.
Yeah, and then when we picked Jair Brown at 87, I was like, cool. I knew that was one of the safeties we were targeting, but I honestly had been not paying that a close attention to sort of like the picks leading up to ours. And I didn't realize 6 picks later when the Steelers took Darnell Washington, the tight end out of Georgia, that he was still on the board. And I was like, ooh, boy, I hope we don't, like, that one doesn't come back to, like, haunt us. Because he was sort of a draft crush of mine with his size, that one-handed step grab he made at the combine. Granted, it's underwear Olympics, I get it. But even when he had that blocking sled, he just made it look like child's play. I mean, the guy's a monster. I was thinking, like, maybe if he could refine his other abilities, maybe some kind of Gronk type ceiling if everything could break right for that kid. So,
yeah, I mean, he definitely looks like it. I think that's a situation where if the 49ers were not sort of in their window of where they are right now, if they were a little further away, I think maybe they would have drafted him, and maybe, you look to make the transition from George Kittle. But I think the way the Niners looked at it, like, hey, we're so close. We're trying to shore up a couple holes in the roster. Safety is an issue now, and it's going to be an issue in the future. And Jair Brown looks like a really, really good player, and I think they think that he could have more of an impact sooner than a backup tight end.
There you go. That makes sense. And I think there's also some health concerns with Darnell Washington. Yep. I saw someone say back. I saw someone else say knee. So I don't know which of those it is, but neither is a great injury to have for a tight end, especially someone you want to do a lot of blocking. Colley's saying he'll be in Pittsburgh. Can't wait to go down there for the opener. I think there's, a pretty good contingent. We travel really well as a fan base. Maybe the best fan base. I mean, clearly Levi's South, the 60-40 ratio down there. I don't think there's any other division rival where the away team shows up and outnumbers the home team like that. It's pretty incredible to see.
It's awesome to see. I thought I was going to be able to go to Pittsburgh for week one. It doesn't look like that, but I am trying really, really hard to maybe get to San Francisco for the Cowboys game, because I have to be out in Nevada for a wedding that weekend. And so, it's only a 4-hour drive from where I'm going to be to San Francisco. I'm trying. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get tickets, because obviously Niners Cowboys is a big ticket. It's Sunday Night Football, but that's I've never been to a 49ers game before. I've never been to an NFL game before. So I'm trying to make my debut in a big way.
That's amazing. That's so cool, Rob. I mean, it's funny because, like, my weekly co-host on Wednesdays, Aaron Labigan from 49ers First Takes, he also has never been to a football game or specifically a 49ers game. I guess when you're out on the East Coast, then it makes it a little tougher to get to Levi's. So I'll give you a pass on that.
Well, not only that, I was always producing a morning radio show, right? At first at ESPN with Mike and Mike, which starts at 6 a.m. Then with Pro Football Talk at NBC, which started at 6 a.m. So it'd be really hard for me to go to a game and then also be up to speed on everything that happened on Sunday to be able to produce a show for Monday morning. So it was a combination of like where I live, but also my job, just not being able to go to the game because I have to work so early the next morning.
No doubt about it. Well, I hope you can make it out. That was one of the games I had sort of circled as game. Like I said, I almost always go to the Seahawks game at Levi's and then probably at least one more game. So I was thinking Cowboys. But my wife is due in mid to late September.
Ooh,
And
congrats.
so, thanks. So with a new arrival, I don't think the Cowboys game will be doable. I was thinking maybe more like Bengals and Seahawks. And then there's usually a third game that gets sprinkled in there too. But again, it'll probably be later in the season. We'll see. Real quick, just want to add a football talk with Bo. He's part of one of these other channels and chat groups that I'm a part of, cross-promotional content creator group. So make sure you check out Football Chat with Bo. Give him a like and a subscribe. Steve-O says Jay Brown is hopefully going to be a monster. Sounds like he's off to a good start. Sounds like kind of a Hufanga clone, right? I mean, kind of slow in the 40, good instincts, good ball hawk, great pass rusher, good tackler, maybe a little lacking in coverage skills, but something that can hopefully be learned.
I think the 49ers have made a change with their safeties. When we had Jimmy Ward and Jaquiski Tart, it was no game-changing plays, but they're not giving up big plays either, right? Keep everything in front of them, make the offense work, and we're going to assume that they're not going to be able to drive the ball 10, 11, 12 plays down the field multiple times a game in order to beat us. And now what I think the 49ers have realized is, hey, we'll live with a couple big plays given up. And the Niners, I think, led the league in 50-yard pass plays allowed last year. But what you get in exchange for that is you get the turnovers. You get those game-changing plays. I think they've decided that they'll live with giving up some big plays if they get guys that can take the ball away. And that's what Hufanga can do. And that's what they think Jair Brown can do. I think he had 5 interceptions the last 2 years in college. I think he's the only safety in the country that can say that. So I think they've just made that switch. Like, hey, we might give up some plays, but we think our offense is good enough that if we get the turnovers, we're turning those into points, and we're not going to give up enough big plays to where it's going to be a problem.
Yeah, exactly. And now we've got Javon Hargrave to add a little more pressure to QBs to hopefully force some more errant throws. And even if the offense can't really drive that well, now we've got, cannon leg Jake Moody who can bang them from 63 yards out. I'm doing that for Bryant Culp. He's a huge Jake Moody fan. I don't know if you've seen Rob, but in his overlay for his show, he has pictures of Jake Moody at all 4 corners. So a couple from college and a couple from camp. And he's just a massive fan.
I don't want to see Jake Moody kicking 60-yard field goals. I want to see Kyle going for it on 4th down. Like, I say it all the time on my show. Field goals are failures. 95% of the time, field goals are failures. As long as a touchdown is worth twice as much as a field goal, like, what are we doing? It doesn't make any sense to me how Kyle Shanahan falls in love with field goals. They are failures. They are worthless. Get touchdowns.
I'm with you. I was saying that when we were talking about drafting a new kicker, and people were saying, well, but Robbie Gould, he makes all these, everything in the playoffs, all his field goals, all his PATs in the playoffs. And I said, actually, it might be better to have a cannon leg kicker who misses some short, because just like that, it might force Kyle to go for it a little more often if you're not quite as sure that your kicker is going to bang him through every time. Also, with a big leg kicker, you get those forced touchbacks. I guess that's a good segue into the the kickoff rule. Although I don't know how much we want to talk about special teams, but I don't think it's really that big of a deal as far as we didn't get a cannon leg kicker because we were worried about people downing the ball and getting it at the 25. We were worried about it because we were worried about them gashing us on returns out to the 35 or 40.
Yeah, and the Niners have had issues with returns on special teams, and you just couldn't have a 40-year-old guy kicking off for you anymore. It wasn't working out. They tried to put Mitch Wishnowsky there. He stunk at it. Plus, it somehow affected his punting, which was really weird. Just get the ball in the tee, kick the damn thing off, let him have touchbacks. Because I think Kyle looks at it like, look, if we don't give up returns, they're not going to go down the field and score touchdowns against us very often. They might do it once or twice a game, but that's probably going to be it, right? The one thing that can get a team back in a game is a big return on special teams. So even if all Jake Moody does is just boot it out and you get touchbacks, I think the Niners will live with that.
There you go. And then Bryant's going crazy. Kickers matter. Kickers put up points. Ask Tom Brady if he was kickers.
They do put up points. And you're right. Like Tom Brady at the end of game, if it's tied and there's very little time left and you need a kicker, great. That's awesome. I totally support that. But when it's, 30 seconds before the half and it's 4th and 1, I don't want you to trot out the kicker. I want you to go for it. It's nothing against kickers. It's math. 7 is worth more than 3, right? Like, you go down the field, you score a touchdown, right? If I'm only going to kick field goals, I got to kick 3 field goals to be ahead of you. And I have to stop you from scoring any more points in the meantime. It's just absurd. Who cares about field goals? I hate them.
Yeah, somebody said a field goal is basically just a turnover with a few points sprinkled in. So, yeah, I like that. I like that line of thought. Be aggressive, Kyle. So just as far as like I had for the title of the show, does Trey Lance have a higher potential ceiling than Brock Purdy? Some people have gotten after me on the timeline because I think I just said, does he have a higher ceiling? And people are thinking actual. But like, do you have any doubts that if Lance can hit his ceiling, that's a higher potential than what Purdy brings to us?
Yes. Okay. I'm sorry. I don't have any doubts. Yes, Lance has the higher ceiling because all of the throws that Brock made last year, if Lance is going to hit his ceiling, he's going to be able to make those as well. What Lance can do that Brock can't do is Trey is faster. He's more mobile because Brock Purdy can move around behind the line of scrimmage, but for whatever reason, he doesn't really run with the ball past that's not what he does. He extends plays behind the line of scrimmage. Lance can run with the ball and gain positive yards. And if he's hitting his ceiling, then we're talking about crazy laser 40-yard darts down the field between 2 defenders, all that stuff. So the ceiling is definitely higher with Lance because he's more physically gifted than Brock Purdy. And that's not meant to be a knock on Brock Purdy in any way. Lance was picked 3rd in the draft. Brock Purdy was picked last in the draft. That happens for a reason. Biggest reason is physical traits. That's not everything. It's certainly not everything that goes into being a good quarterback, but it's not nothing either. And I think it's okay to acknowledge that. And we have no idea if Lance can hit the ceiling, but if you're asking me whose ceiling is higher, it's definitely Trey.
I agree 100%. And did you see that Alex Rollins video that's been floating around that said that Purdy and Jimmy G are the same quarterback?
Yeah.
I took exception to that. I thought basically Purdy's a little better, at least a little better overall. And then, of course, he's much cheaper and much younger. But did you watch the video? And what were your thoughts on it?
I did watch it. I disagreed with it. I think that the similarities exist because of the offense. Like, yeah, Jimmy throws a lot to the middle of the field. Brock throws a lot to the middle of the field. That's basically the offense. And that's also Kyle playing to both of those players' strengths, which I think are similar in a lot of ways. But Brock does not put the ball in harm's way nearly as often as Jimmy Garoppolo. I've seen Brock throw the football away. I have seen that. I don't think I've ever seen that with Jimmy Garoppolo. He never throws the ball away. He's got the confidence of a daytime burglar for some reason. They're not the same guy at all. And I disagreed with that video. It was a nice video. It was nicely produced, but I disagreed with it. And you have to watch the actual games and see the way the players play and not just look at the numbers that they put up because they don't tell the full story.
That's true. And one of the numbers that people like to bandy about was the 33 points per game with Purdy versus 26 with Jimmy G, a full touchdown difference. But he did have a good answer to that where he said basically 2.4 turnovers forced by our defense per game versus 1.2. That accounts for about half of that delta, in my opinion. And then
automatically score more points just because the defense is getting more turnovers.
I mean, I guess not automatically, but I think on average, you can say that you usually do. And then the other thing I was saying was that Brock played a lot of banged up and bad defenses, both. And so that could account for some of the difference. The small sample size, that's why a 16-game season is so helpful for comparison, because it's harder to have like all bad, all good. It tends to even out over a 17-game season these days. So when you have 10 for Jimmy and 8 for Brock, and of course 6 regular season and 2 playoff games for Purdy, I do count the Dolphins game since Jimmy only played one series in that game. But I know we're short on time here, Rob, and I know I promised to be mindful of your time. Was there anything else that you wanted to talk about today while we were here together before we let you get going on your way?
Well, one of the things I'm going to get into with Grant Cohn today in a couple hours, he drives me nuts when he does. He gets on these like crusades, and the criticism that I have seen of Kyle Shanahan online is driving me nuts a little bit. I think we need to relax. And I get that he hasn't won a Super Bowl, but we have to stop acting like nothing else he does matters and everything else he does you can just take for granted and plug in any coach, because that is not the same. Since 2019, there have only been 4 teams that have won more games than the 49ers. And those teams have been quarterbacked by Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Aaron Rodgers, and Lamar Jackson. Some pretty damn good quarterbacks. And I shouldn't say none. One of them has had more playoff success than the 49ers. That's, of course, the Chiefs. Everybody else cannot touch what the 49ers have done in the playoffs. That's a real thing. That matters and it counts. And I get that there's plenty of stuff that you can criticize Kyle Shanahan for, but the idea that like we've reached a ceiling with him and we have to get a new coach, I think is absolutely crazy. And I'm going to go at Grant a little bit today at around 9 a.m. Pacific time.
Perfect. Well, get him. I'm a big Grant fan myself, a big Shanna fan, but I will say, like you mentioned, the QBs, I'm starting to like lose a little trust with them with the QB situation.
Fair.
Just passing on Mahomes, passing on Brady, not getting Stafford, even keeping Jimmy as our bridge QB. I think the bridge QB in general was a good idea for Lance because he was so raw. But, maybe not one who the locker room can't, allow you to do what you want to do with switching them in and out.
Yep.
And then also I get on people. I say, if Purdy was our best QB last year, then why was he QB3 to start the season? Why did both guys have to get injured to bring him in? It makes me wonder about his evaluation skills. But, that and third round running backs. Otherwise, I'm a huge Shanna fan. I think he's a total genius. So I don't want to fire him or sack him or anything. I just hope he can learn and get better. And I think he will. I think he could be Andy Reid 2.0, just needs his Mahomes, or maybe not even quite a Mahomes, just, top 10 QB, I think is about what he needs to get us home to get number 6.
I would say let's go with Mahomes. Let's keep looking for Mahomes. Let's not settle for just top 10. Let's try to get 1. And if you can't get 1, keep trying until you do.
There you go. Jess from East Coast Red and Golden House. Check her out today at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern, every Wednesday. Great show. She was on with me yesterday. Rob, thanks so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. It means the world to me. If there's anything I can ever do to help pay you back, please be sure to let me know. I'm big on repaying debts. And I look forward to seeing you and Grant later this morning. And I'll keep an eye out for all your shows. That's make sure you check Rob out at Stats on Fire on Twitter, at GSN 49ers on YouTube. And keep in mind, like if you ever wonder, I also mentioned something in one of my titles about Kay Adams' favorite 49ers content creator, because always blown away that she interacts with you on Twitter. And I think you've had her on your show. She's had you on. It's pretty awesome. And keep up the great work, Rob. It's really inspirational to the rest of us.
Well, thank you, Ted. And I just want to give a shout out to everybody. There's so many 49ers content creators. Obviously, a lot of them are watching. And I think it's awesome. I think it's one of the only teams that has this sort of unique kind of, I don't want to call it like a counter press corps, but like there's a whole group of us that cover this team that talk about it. It's not like that for other teams. It's really great that the 49ers have that. And I appreciate everybody that's watching and everybody that does it, because I think as fans, it makes us better and smarter fans.
There you go. And one last thing, just a content creator thing that's been going around. Bryant Culp has pretty much replaced, the fire emojis now with pineapple emojis as an homage to George Kittle and that revealing video that he posted, or the ad that he did with the pineapple. So that if you see those, that a lot of people have replaced fire with pineapples these days. So
thank you for keeping me hip.
just don't put them on a pizza. That's all I have to say.
Amen.
Amen. All right. Thanks, Rob. Appreciate you being here. I'll say peace and go Niners.